Another day, another video, working on Project Cream Puff. So in the last video, I was really trying to get the car sitting on the ground, and I kind of overcommitted to having the car off the jack stands. But that's still the same goal today. I got some new parts in, some new stuff to go on the car, not just to be able to help it roll and have four wheels and tires on the ground, but also some other neat parts that for the beam stuff. So let's go take a look at that first. Black Friday is pretty much the best time to buy car parts, or really anything in the US, because everything is on sale for a good deal. But there's a couple of companies that typically only do sales only during Black Friday. And one of those companies makes super neat Beams 3S GE swap parts. So we're going to be installing a part from JSP Fab, this super nifty fuel rail. So we'll get into that in a minute. I also got some new brake pads. Those are going to go on, and then hopefully we'll get some wheels on the car and get it set on the ground. If you don't know who JSP Fab is, JSP Fab is owned and operated by John Rusikoff. And John Rusikoff was a part of my whole introduction to AE86s over a decade ago. He used to drift an AE86 in Formula D, so it was really cool seeing like a professional person, or a professional driver go from that to making parts like this. I've really enjoyed watching JSP Fab develop over the years, and it makes me really happy to see JSP support the beam swap community. So they make a lot of really cool beams parts. So for example, on my drift car, I have their J160 reverse lockout shifter. So there'll be a thing that pops up if you want to take a look at that. Pretty much on the J160, which is the Beams 3S GE 6-speed manual transmission, reverse. To put it in reverse, you go all the way over to the left, and then a little bit further, so there's like first, and then you go a little bit past that and push forward, and that's where the reverse is, but there's no lockout. So if you're trying to downshift, say from like third to second, and like you're like drifting like super fast, and you're like, okay, slam it down at a second. Well, if you're not careful, you can actually push it over into that reverse gate, and then you go to yank it back to put it in gear. Well, there's nothing there. So then you're not in gear, and then, sometimes you accidentally crash, or almost crash. So the reverse lockout shifter, what it does is it puts a little gate there, so when you go to push it over, to actually get it into reverse, you have to move the shifter to get it into the reverse gate. So it's a reverse lockout. Anyway, super awesome. I was really humbled when John reached out to me and asked for my opinions on making a fuel rail for the beams. So that was a while ago, and there's some really neat things about this, and I guess we'll get into that as we put it on the car, because I was super grateful and humbled that John reached out to me about my opinion on some things about it, and if I had any suggestions for it. Let's go ahead and get this on the car, and we'll talk through it. Okay, here we have them sitting side by side. You'll probably notice a couple of physical differences. So when I was talking to John about some of the designs on this, one of the things I recommended is the stock one has these little ears into the casting. I said, maybe remove those, because what those are there for is to hold the injectors from wiggling back and forth. But the problem is when you go to upgrade the injectors to larger injectors, like the 1050 cc's I run on my drift car, you end up having to swap to a different connector, and these get in the way. So these are nice, machined real smooth, don't have that problem. Another thing you'll notice is right here, where the fuel pressure dampener normally would go, is moved. And the reason for this is because when you're running 20 valve ITBs, and you want to keep the stock linkage, it's like right up here. And if you want to keep the stock linkage as well as the fuel pressure damper, which I recommend, they moved it because it was interfering with the linkage here. So moving it a little bit further down gives you more space. I don't have that problem with the Panic ITBs, but it's just a neat difference. Another thing too is the difference in the thread pitch here. The stock fuel rail is a metric thread. So if you're going to put AN fittings on it to adapt the fuel line to it, we've got to use a metric to AN, then AN fitting, so you end up like stacking adapters. And if you want to put a fuel pressure regulator directly on the rail, it just doesn't work very well. The JSP Fab one, they're a -8 AN ORB, O-ring boss fitting. So a little bit bigger, a little bit better, a much more standard thread pitch when it comes to fuel system components. The diameter of the machining here is also larger. The bore is larger. When you're running higher fuel flow or whatever, it's going to be able to be capable of a higher horsepower number without having kinds of fuel restrictions. Oh, another thing that's pretty neat is you can order it with different size injector holes. So this is the stock size injector, but you can also order it with a larger, I think it's a larger diameter for a more standard aftermarket injector, high performance injector that's out there. All right, let's go get this guy put on the car. One of the other things I forgot to point out earlier is this guy. This is a nice spot to be able to put a fuel pressure gauge. So it's a pipe thread, pretty standard for most fuel pressure gauges, so you can thread that guy right in there if you want one. Fuel rail's on, looks super pretty. Now to install the parts that I ordered wrong last time. I picked up some Hawk HPS pads. I've used HPS pads on some other cars before, and I've liked them for street pad, and that's actually what came on the rear calipers I just put on the car. On Facebook, I asked like who of my buddies was the hookup for Hawk pads. My friend Ravi from We Don't Lift, he reached out. I've known Ravi for a long time. Actually, like one of the first car people I met was Ravi. Like, this is like when I was in high school, so years and years and years ago. And at the time, he was driving an FD RX-7 while working at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Now he road races an NSX. He's kind of known for like NSX stuff. And Robbie's business, We Don't Lift Racing, aside from selling brake pads, kind of what their main focus is on automotive racing safety equipment. So helmets and gloves and fire suits, harnesses, seats, all that stuff. They're super knowledgeable, super awesome. Shout out to Ravi at We Don't Lift Racing. Also, take a look in the comments below for a link to his business page as well as his YouTube page, because he also posts a bunch of videos and things from him racing his NSX and other like neat things they're working on. I also tried to get new brake pad hardware with the brake pads, and I ordered like 3 different ones and could never get the right hardware. So I'm gonna have to reuse the old hardware to put the new pads in on the brand new refreshed calipers and the brand new rotors. So yeah. But then we can bolt wheels on. All right, the brakes are done. Now it's on to wheels. We're finally gonna get this thing off of the jack stands. first time in, I don't know, like 2 years. It's finally not on jack stands. Yay! Man, it looks so good. So we've got, I don't know if these CBY, I don't know what the side skirts are, but we got run-free fenders, CBY front bumper, TRD style wing. We got the Advans on the back. Yeah. Man, this makes me so excited. And this is just sitting on cut springs, not even good springs. But it's a good ride height, I feel like. That's pretty good. Unfortunately, on the front, I just have a stock pizza cutter and a Steely on the other side. My watts are still sitting. I didn't quite have the time or money to order new tires for the watts, so this is how it's going to be for now anyway. This is really exciting. This makes me really happy. The first time in way too long, the car's off jack stands and sitting on all four wheels and tires on the ground. This will probably be the last video for a couple of weeks. The holidays are upon us, so my focus is going to be more on spending time with family and friends, and then once we get back from the holidays, I do have some more parts to install and hopefully get this car closer to ready to fire up. I've got some more neat beams, cleanup parts to put on, so once those get in, similar to like the JSP fuel rail, so a couple of other things like that to help really tidy up the engine bay, make things look a little bit cleaner and nicer. So what I still have left on this is I need to get the drive shaft shortened and balanced. I couldn't find a place locally to me to shorten it and balance it. I need to get rear brake lines. So the stainless steel braided lines I only have 2 to the 3 rear lines instead of all 3, so that's kind of weird. And I can't seem to find a place to order just the rears from, so I still got to figure that out. I don't really want to buy a whole new set, but it wouldn't be a bad thing to have a couple of spares for the front. What else? I got to fix the wiring. The wiring for the instrument cluster to the inside, I gotta figure out what I'm doing with that. So when I get back, that's going to be my main focus, is figure out what we're going to do for the wiring to be able to get it running, because even before starting it, I would like to get everything powered up, make sure everything with the ECU works, I can see all the different sensors, all that stuff. I'm going to have to fix the oil pan. I was really hoping to put a JSP Fab oil pan on this because the JSP Fab beams oil pans are fantastic, but I missed the pre-order. And sometimes the parts like this, like how he used to make his headers, if he didn't make it on the order, that was it, and then he wouldn't do another run for a long time. I think those are like the main things. I guess I still need to build the radiator mounts, so I could do that. Maybe that'll be the first thing I do when I get back, is build the radiator mount so I can put the radiator in. And then I have some seat mounts to weld up because they're blown out, kind of a common 8.6 thing. Weld some holes shut, put some carpet in it, and then we'll be pretty close to being ready to drive this thing. I would like to put a nice set of coilovers on it instead of having cut springs. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get a new set of coilovers soon. Yeah, that's it. I'm really happy. This is really exciting.